first keynote speaker. Dr. Celia Williamson is a professor of social work at the University of Toledo and is the founder of Second Chance, a comprehensive program that partners with former victims of human trafficking and prostitution. Dr. Celia Williamson is a known national expert on this. And she's published 25 articles on commercial sexual exploitation, given well over 200 presentations, been the keynote speaker at over 20 conferences on topics like this. She has secured numerous awards, believe in the several hundreds of thousands of dollars range, to fund anti-human trafficking initiatives in Toledo and in the greater Lucas County. And so you can't imagine the excitement and how happy I was when we found out that Dr. Williamson was able to come to speak, because wherever it is that I go and whatever speaker I hear from, Dr. Williamson's name always comes up. And so we're very, very thankful to have her here today. And if you would join me in welcoming Dr. Celia Williamson to our first speaker.
And thank you for, putting your teeth into this issue and not letting go. So I appreciate that. I could not come. I don't think he would have let me not come. And I love it. I like that. Okay, see if I'm doing this right. Did I put this in right?
I think so. Let's see. Yeah. I'm sorry, you guys. My technology skills aren't up to par. I just want to mention something that I forgot to mention already. We're very, very thankful for the artists that were able to come. And you'll see more of Diana and Tom Williams' art, Christy C. Barth, Jenny Flowers' art. I just want to read something real quick. This is called a One Big Good Celebration of Freedom. 3 Indiana artists unite talents to present the untold stories of children in Ghana, West Africa, rescued from child labor trafficking. Titled One Big Good, a Celebration of Freedom, 50+ art pieces represent a visual voice of artistic abolition. This sensitive collection promotes awareness, educates, and celebrates the healing, hope, and potential that each child's life represents. The exhibit title is inspired by the words of a Ghanaian girl with shy eyes and a heart full of gratitude. Shortly after her rescue, she was asked, "What are you most thankful for?" She named the women who had championed her freedom. In broken English, she added, "I'm thankful that anyone can do a big good." By using a common adjective as a noun, poetry was granted mistaken wings. This exhibit is our big good. With our talents, we toss our stone. We pray for a ripple effect to be set in motion. Painting paradigms as well as pictures, mobilizing compassion into action. And so we would just like to invite you during the downtimes, the breaks, to come up here and to view this and to learn a little bit more about this tapestry. And also when we go over to the polling center around lunchtime, there's a lot of different art over there as well. So we hope you enjoy that, and we hope that this gives you a different medium through which to understand human trafficking. So without further ado, Dr. Celia Williamson.
So we're just going to get right into it. We have 45 minutes, so I'm going to dispense with the niceties and just tell you the truth. So human trafficking is the second largest criminal enterprise in the world. Guns and drugs are also up there, but with human trafficking, you can resell your victim over and over. The United States has identified human trafficking as modern-day slavery. As you know, the United States does not use the word slavery lightly. We have a very painful history that's still very real to us. And so when we use the word slavery, we actually mean the loss of freedom for people, the selling of people. And it can also be, of course, on our soil, U.S. citizens as well as foreign nationals being brought here. In the United States today, domestic minors, American youth, are by far the largest group that are being trafficked in the United States. We passed the Trafficking Victims Protection Act in 2000, where we said, okay, we admit that we have victims and we're no longer going to treat them as criminals and arrest them and deport them or put them in our jails. We're going to actually treat them as victims. So in the United States, if you're involved in sex trafficking, for instance, and that involves force, fraud, or coercion, then you are the victim of crime of sex trafficking. Or if you have not yet reached the age of 18. If you're under the age of 18 under the federal law, you are the victim of the crime of child sex trafficking. It doesn't matter what your intent, doesn't matter your attitude. You can say, I love doing this, this is what me and my boyfriend decided that I should do. And the federal government will say, you don't have the right to choose to commercially sell yourself by choice. You are the victim of a crime. Now, what happens to kids across the U.S. when we rescue them, when we find them, and they have been involved in the sex trade? What do you think happens? Y'all are gonna have to talk to me. What happens? Somebody say it again. Foster care. Because the wonderful people at Spring Arbor have such good hearts. No.
I would say they're labeled, re-victimized.
They're labeled and re-victimized. Sure, in the abstract sense. What happens literally? Detention center. Let me translate that. Arrested, handcuffed, put in detention center. Now, didn't I just tell you that they were victims of a crime? So why do you think they do that in the United States? Why do you think they do that in Michigan? They don't know what else to do. So they say, well, we are trying to protect them. I have to lock them up to protect them. It's done with the best intentions. Well, let me give you a scenario. Let's say you're here right now, and when you go home, you find out your house has been burglarized. And you call the police, and the police come. And the police say, well, you know what, I'm really afraid that the burglars are gonna come back and it's gonna turn into a robbery. And I don't want you to be hurt, so I'm gonna take you to jail for your own protection. How many people go with that plan? No, they'll be talking to your attorney, right? But we do that to children every day in Michigan and across the United States. And we do it with the best intentions. But it doesn't matter if your captors are nice, if your captors have been legitimized, it's still you being held captive for something that you didn't do, a crime you didn't commit. Not only that, not only is their trafficker raping, beating, selling, and brutalizing them, but their community that rescues them re-traumatizes them by incarcerating them. Oh, well, we do it with best intentions, but unfortunately, young people, they don't watch what we say, they watch what we do. If my freedom's taken, I know that I've done something wrong. So second trauma. Then we want them to testify, sometimes in federal cases where their trafficker doesn't have an interest in them making it to the witness stand. So we have to send them away to be safe, where they say have no sense of family, no sense of community. A third trauma. And we say that children are our most precious resource. So we have a lot of work to do, don't we? There are about 12.3 million slaves in the world today. Some people say upwards of 27 million, but the conservative estimate is 12.3. 800,000 trafficked across borders each year. The United States estimates 14,500 to 17,500 are brought into the United States from other countries each year to be sold into the labor, into the sex trade. Domestically, about 300,000 kids, American kids, are at risk for sex trafficking. And of those, 100,000 young people who are our citizens are trafficked into the sex trade. So when you look at 17,500, we have a lot of foreign victims here each year. Compared to 100,000 kids, you have seen these kids. Most of you have seen at least one. And so that's why, not only along with modern day slavery as a campaign, but the other campaign is to rescue and restore. And the other campaign is to look beneath the surface. And that's the reason why you see a lot of posters that say, look beneath the surface. Because you see these people. In Ohio, we have 783 at least foreign victims every year that are brought into Ohio and sold into the sex or the labor trade. We have over 3,000 domestic minors at risk, and over 1,000 of our domestic minors are recruited from Ohio, sold around Ohio, and sold across the country. Does Michigan know how many victims it has? It does not. So, your first plan of action, you have to know an estimate of how many victims you have. Why? Because you can best pass legislation, convince people, do awareness campaigns when you are aware. I'm going to address this a little bit later, but let me tell you that according to Shared Hope International in Washington, D.C., who is the watchdog for the protection of kids involved in the sex trade, what do you think, what grade do you think Michigan has between an A and an F? F. So you have some work to do. My state, we have a C. We're not going to quit until we have an A. But an F? This is, if we had to take child sex trafficking, and I'm going to focus my talk on domestic minors, because I think that you're most likely to see them. If we had to focus the talk, or focus the issue, we could say it in one sentence. This is from a trafficker who said, with the young girls, you promise them heaven, they'll follow you to hell. That's exactly the experience. So I want to show you hell. This is hell. So this is a kid beginning her involvement as a slave in the sex trade. And then this is progressively just her physical deterioration. I'm not even showing you, or I can't describe to you, I don't have time to describe to you her emotional trauma, her psychological deterioration. You can just see the physical deterioration. That these aren't kids just out having a good time, making money, and deserve to be arrested. These are all kids under 18. So, you know, we go around a lot, we talk about, well, we don't want one kid to fall through the cracks. You know, we have to build this continuum of care so no kids fall through the cracks. But let's look at the systems first, because don't we have to get our systems in order first so that the kids don't fall through the cracks? So pick on my system. I'm a researcher. And so this is what we thought. We thought that kids had some childhood stressors when they were little and some abuses and things, and then they developed a low self-worth, and then they went out and got themselves involved in prostitution. We never thought about who was buying them, who was selling them. It was just all their fault. They took themselves out and got themselves involved. And so when you define the problem that way, then the solution becomes counseling, because you have some individual pathology that we have to fix. But over time, we started to see it as a business with supply, the victims, demand, the customers. distributors, the traffickers. And when you look at it as a business, then you attack the problem in a whole different way. You say to yourself, I have to attack each one of these corners in the triangle if I'm going to reduce this problem, right? I have to, if I'm going to respond to victims, I have to meet my competitor. In a business, that's what you talk about, competition. So my competitor has, for the victim, a place to sleep, food to eat, clothes to wear, places to travel to, peers to hang out with, a love, even though it's abusive and traumatic. 24/7, my competition has this. What do I have? Come to my office for counseling 2 hours a week. And that's been our response. He has nuclear capabilities and we're circling the wagons, talking about why aren't we winning? So the solution, once we understood it that way, was the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, where we said we are going to look at it as a business. They are going to be treated as victims. Let's look at the system of organized crime, which is really crime that is organized. When we think about organized crime, we're thinking of gangsters and people involved in shady activities and things like that. And yeah, that's true, but it's not all people involved in the underground market. It's not all gangsters. For this business to be successful, it requires the cooperation of conventional society. Conventional society has to cooperate, right? In labor trafficking, who's the biggest purchasers? We are. We are. And so we don't want to spend those couple pennies more to buy fair trade items, and those types of things. We're trying to get that deal, but we have to remember, if we get an incredible deal on something, we ought to be suspicious, because somebody is not getting paid at all. In crime that is organized, you have hotels and motels involved, you have truckers and trucking companies that look the other way. You have all these things, and they have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. So some of the things we're prepared to say to our trucking companies that allow their customers to pick up kids and women, we want you to be a good corporate neighbor. If you don't, we will take a picture of that kid getting in that truck, and we will buy a billboard on the highway, and we will post it up there and say that they don't want to be concerned with the care and well-being of children. I mean, that's the type of advocate you have to start being, to shake up these systems, to help these systems work and play well together. So in trafficking, you have the trafficker, but you don't just have the trafficker and the kid, or trafficker and a couple of kids. You have a bottom, you have a recruiter, a watcher, a groomer, a connector. All these people have jobs in this trafficking industry, in these neighborhoods. The bottom is the assistant manager. The recruiter is the person that goes out and gets the kids, and the recruiter is not going to be some scary, creepy guy. What kind of business model is that? The recruiter is going to be another little 14-year-old kid. It's going to be a 16-year-old boy, smelling good, looking good, walking good with a new car. It's going to be a mom, the one you always wanted. It's going to be the adult woman that is the cool woman that every teenager wants to hang out with. What's going to be presented to you is somebody that is going to fill the need, the vulnerability that you have. Groomers, they dress the kids, watchers, connectors. Those are the people that drive the kids to the strip clubs, to the truck stops where the kids are forced to work and those sorts of things. We have to demand accountability. Remember when I said supply and demand and distribution? Well, we actually love helping victims. Like, people who become aware, they get that. And they want to save and rescue victims. But we have to remember that, every victim that you pick out the pond, there's another one, and another one, and another one. And we love to put those traffickers in prison for years and years and years because that feels very satisfying. And then when it comes to customers, strangely silent. Strangely silent in the law. You know, no teeth in the law. Here are our customers in Ohio. And as you read down the list, those are just the professions we happen to ask. You know, we could ask all the professions. So what can you take away from this? Is that a customer who buys a child is not the creepy guy who lives under the bridge. Why? Because the guy under the bridge can't afford the premium product of a 14-year-old. That's the gold standard. That's the high price item. Big ticket purchase. So who is it? They're people working in professions. You can see law enforcement up there. You can see pastors up there. You can see social workers up there. Social workers, that hurts my heart because, you know, that's what I am. But it cuts across all the fields. It doesn't matter. So we have to start the conversation about demand and accountability of people who purchase. Right? Just think of it. If we end demand, we end trafficking. Let's look at the police and the criminal justice system. Arresting the wrong person. Arresting the wrong person. So if we looked at equity in arrest, you know, let's take Michigan. I know in Ohio, one person involved in prostitution, whether it's trafficking or whether it's a misdemeanor of prostitution, somebody just is on the street and they want to sell sex and it's a misdemeanor, that person has an average of 8 customers, okay? That's 8 more times that you can arrest somebody. So if you have 4 sellers, and you have, for every 4 sellers, you have 32 potential arrests that could be made. But you know what? It's going to be overwhelmingly the seller will be arrested. Now why is that? Because there's no distinction in the law. Why is that? Well, we have to get down to the truth. It's sexism. It's plain old sexism. That's what it is. People who want access to this particular population to purchase, and other people who are victims who will pay the price. When we're talking about trafficking cases, these are actually federal trafficking cases. The customer still will not, is less likely to face accountability. Why? Because the prosecution is going to use, or the defense is going to use the trafficker or the customer as a witness against the trafficker. They're going to use the customer as a witness against the trafficker. And so what does that customer get? He gets a reduced sentence or immunity in exchange for his testimony. That's sending the wrong message. Let's look at the educational system. Well, we have schools filled with kids at risk, and they're teaching the history of slavery and nothing about modern-day slavery. Some of our social studies classes, we should demand that there's a segment, a couple of units on that to protect kids, to keep kids aware, to let them know who to call, who to report to. Let's look at the social service system. We insist on providing a generalized menu of services, our same old, to a population that has highly specialized needs. We want to stay disconnected and not coordinated. If we offer parenting classes, guess what your problem is when you walk in the door? Isn't it amazing? Your problem just happens to be that you need parenting classes. If the only thing you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And if you don't want to work together in a coordinated way, you are not serving the population. We know our population needs trauma treatment. Okay, when we send them to counseling, it doesn't work. They have been traumatized and they need trauma treatment. They need somebody with a modality, somebody that's been educated and trained to provide good trauma treatment, not just counseling. So if we start to change these systems, maybe we can start to compete with our competition. What we need to do is we have to move victims to survivors. But then we stop there. We stop there. In social services, if we make you a survivor, man, we're patting ourselves on the back and closing the case. That's not done, it's not cooked. It's gotta go from survivor to thriver. Thriver is what you all are. When you get up in the morning and go to jobs, when you get up in the morning and go to your university class, it's because you're a thriver, you're empowered economically. Some of you would sit out there and say, no, I'm broke. But you have a pathway. People have opened a pathway towards your economic empowerment. So why move people from victim to survivor? It's pretty cruel to have somebody sober, understanding their trauma, and broke. Thank you very much. Now I'm sober 24/7 and I know what the hell, say that. I know. Now I have to deal with myself 24/7 with not much of a future. That's pretty cool. So we have to remember, we're moving people from survivor to thriver. The table in the back are one of those people selling. You know what they're doing? Social enterprise. People that are able to make things and sell them and be in business and feel good about themselves and pay their bills. America's not really good on that, but other countries are doing that very well. Religious system. Do you understand this is a spiritual crisis? This is a spiritual issue. That's what it is. And we grow to understand that, you know, you think you're in the construction business or the carpentry business or the nursing business or the social work business. You're in one business. That's the business of your Father. That's what business you're in. And the older you get, hopefully, you become wise to know that you're here to make the world a better place. That's what you're here for. My generation, that's what we did. We ran around trying to find ourselves and figure out what we should be doing. What we should be doing is helping people make the world a better place. So religious system. If you open your mind, you will open your heart. You open your heart, you open your doors. And so we have to become aware and we have to become open. And not only open our doors when people come in, we have to come out. We have to come out. And we have to become uncomfortable. I think it's a marriage between the two. It's going to be the religious systems and young people that are going to make all the difference. Because when I started my program in 1993, before we even had words called human trafficking, we just had words called this ain't right. When I started my program back in 1993, who gave me the first money and believed we could do it? The church. The church. So the church has to become relevant in a major way on this issue. The healthcare system has to be responsive. Talk about that system. Sometimes kids or women go in there and they're beat up. And they know why they're beat up. And the healthcare person has a clue why they're beat up and nobody says anything. Don't ask, don't tell policy, and they patch them up and send them back to their underground and dangerous lives. That has to stop. Why? Because there's three systems that kids who are trafficked are most likely to be involved in. The social service system, which they may not like us much because we've been involved in their lives earlier. The criminal justice system that they certainly don't like, and the healthcare system when they go to the emergency room or healthcare clinic, which is neutral territory. Healthcare system has such great opportunity to engage right there. They have a window of opportunity. Healthcare people have power. They can make people leave the room while they ask you intimate questions, You ever notice that? You go to a healthcare professional, you never met them. They say, take off all your clothes, I want to stick my fingers in places that fingers don't go. And you go, okay, that sounds reasonable. Right? So they have such power, such opportunity. The media system, let's look at that. They need to be responsible. You people need to write in and tell the media when they've gotten it wrong. No one should ever write in the paper, 2 14-year-old prostitutes rescued today. How terrible to have your child taken and sold, and thank God you got them back. And then to have this person write to the entire community that your child is a prostitute. That's gotta be devastating. Especially when they're victims of a crime. So when you see that happening, write in and correct this person. The media influence, well, now, we wonder. I was gonna put a wanted poster up here against these names, because I'm gonna tell you why. We sit our 2 and 3-year-olds down early, and we say, here, baby girl, learn about your place in the world. And then we show her Belle, who all she wanted was what? Didn't you know Belle? Who did she want, I should say? Remember Belle? The Beauty and the Beast? Oh. You guys don't have little ones anymore. Belle, Beauty and the Beast. All she wanted in life was what? To change him from a horrible beast to a prince. We see that in domestic violence every day. I'm going to change him from a beast. We see that. That's where they get their first look at that. Cinderella. Oh, she married the prince and lived? Right. Because we all know in our marriages, they're happily ever, no. Ariel. Remember, she was Little Mermaid. Yeah. She gave up her homeland. She gave up her voice for her man. Her voice. Let me tell you, when we give up our voice, we're done. But this is what we educate our kids. Sleeping Beauty, she couldn't even move without the kiss of a man. She couldn't even, all she could do was breathe. You see? And then Barbie. Who is this? If her body were truly anatomically that way, she would just crack over because her weight, her breasts wouldn't support her weight. Right? It just doesn't work. And she has everything. And she doesn't work. She doesn't, you see? And I won't even put Snow White on the board. I won't even give her that type of credit because Snow White, the most beautiful woman in all the land, I have a problem with that. What about Snow Brown? Snow Black? I'm not even going to dignify her by putting it up here. But these are the ways that we begin to educate our young girls and tell them. We're telling them a loud and clear message. So that when they become teenagers and you say, well, how did you get this way? Wanting to show your body, all you're about is your body, when you know you're smart and you can do something and all you want to do is hang on the arm of somebody with gold chains and a lot of money. You say, well, how did you get there? Just remember the Cosmopolitan magazines that we've been buying and the videos that we've been allowing them to watch. I like the new videos, Shrek and all those. They get to be green and fat. I think that's a better representation. So let's look at the child welfare system. They really, really they have an economic interest in us not calling child trafficking child abuse. They really don't want us to call child trafficking child abuse. And they will be your major opponent when you try to change laws. And because see, what the point is to stop having the juvenile court as the primary institution in the trafficked child's life, and start having child protection as the primary institution, child welfare, child care and well-being. That should be the primary institution. And so as you try to push for that, that's a multi-million-dollar price tag that they don't want. They have an interest in juvenile court paying for the problem. And so they will be your major opponent. So some solutions. Well, Polaris Project in DC is sort of the spearhead that reports on what's going on across the nation. And right now, Michigan is at a tier 2, not so bad, in overall trafficking. You can see Ohio, I'm very proud of this, tier 1 in Kearney. So you have some work to do in overall trafficking according to the Polaris Project. According to Shared Hope, like I said, Shared Hope just focuses on domestic minors, just children in the 2nd grade. Michigan has an F. And they report out of all the sex offenses that a buyer could be convicted and required to be registered as a sex offender. If they bought someone involved in prostitution, even a minor, they don't have to register as a sex offender. As if paying for sex with somebody 14 is different than just having sex with someone who's 14. The mistake of age may be a defense. In Ohio, you can't come in and say, oh, I didn't know. In Michigan, you can. So what we did is we went across 5 Ohio cities in 2012 where we surveyed people who had been child victims. And we weren't interested so much in finding out what was happening when you were a victim, because we think we know a lot of that information. We were interested in what were you doing, what was happening in your life before you became a victim, 6 months, a year before someone trafficked you. Why? Because it's a good idea to intervene and help victims. It's even a good idea, a better idea, to find them before they become victims. I've been doing this 20 years, working with victims, and I can tell you the success rate is very low. And so finding high-risk kids before they become victims is critically important. So we found out what was statistically significant was these indicators. And we call them rescue child. And I'd be happy to give this PowerPoint over, and you can have a sign-up sheet and they can send it to you and you can have it. But we used the acronym Rescue Child because we had a dilemma. We wanted frontline workers, first responders, to be able to do the quick assessment and then do something about it. Because the problem is, once you know how to identify, what do you do? And you can't spend an hour, we can't ask the frontline worker to spend an hour or 3 hours trying to figure it out, because they do have things that they have to do. We need to give them something, a tool that they can use quickly. So our kids who were high risk had been runaways. They had problems with the educational system. Maybe they had educational difficulties of some sort. They had been sexually assaulted, raped prior by other people. They had been vulnerable for a long time. Court appearances. These kids were more likely to have been arrested, to spend time in detention, to appear before a judge. People have seen them. Using drugs and alcohol. They used drugs and alcohol but weren't addicted to drugs and alcohol, but that placed them in places with risky others. Emotional abuse, child abuse, such as sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect. They experienced those things. Child welfare had been in the home, but they had closed the case. Matter of fact, we did a study that the closer they became to being trafficked, the higher the likelihood that child welfare closed the case, got out of it before they were trafficked. These kids have been homeless or likely to be, which means they didn't necessarily not ever have a home. They may have had a home, but they couldn't always access the home. They had been kicked out. They were not only runaways, they were throwaways, giveaways. Gay youth are 2.5 times more likely to be trafficked. There are fewer in number, but their risk is higher. Loving someone much older, these were kids 14 years old, their boyfriend was 27. You know, that's going to give you sort of a red flag. Difficulty making friends. So these were the risk factors. So what we're doing in Ohio, among our coalitions, is we're really trying to pick off each one of these risk factors and say, what can we do? How can we respond? What do we have going on right now to address these risk factors? How can we fill the gap and how can we respond to each one of these? And so, for example, runaway. What do we do about runaways? Lock them in the juvenile court, juvenile detention, if we find them. See, we don't go out and find them. So that's the problem. Runaways run away, and here's what you do in Michigan and Ohio and all our brilliance. We wait for them to run back. Then we do something, maybe. But what if you ran away and you can't run back? Because you don't have the freedom to run back. Well, this is what happens. If you're 7 years old and you're missing, what happens? Amber alert. If you happen to be in a store, code at shut down the store, nobody leave, find this kid. Now, if that same kid is 15, what happens? Mother calls the police. Wait. Police come, they say, well, when was your last argument? Have they run away before? They're building the case to use their discretion to say that this child ran away. Now, if that child can't run back, they're just not. Police do not engage in active enforcement to find runaways. If it's a group of kids that stand on the corner, they'll stop and say, where are you guys supposed to be? It's school hours, let me see some ID. But they don't actively look for runaways. In Ohio, we have about 18,000 runaways a year. We use the entire police force just looking for runaways. They don't do it. But you say, with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they are the people that connect the dots across states. And I say, yeah, but you have to agree to participate in the National Center. In Ohio, we have about 45 kids' names on the National Center's website. And I said we have 18,000. So the chief of police has to agree to participate. If he doesn't feel it's important, or she doesn't get it. So where are they? They're just gone. So here's the scenario. I take a kid, I sell them, I brutalize them. If it is found out, because nobody's going to be looking for the kid, they're going to be called a runaway. They're going to arrest my victim and not understand the industry, and I'm going to be long gone. So which business do you want to be in? Guns and drugs, where we know exactly what to look for and how to prosecute it, or do you want to be in human trafficking? So when I go to communities, I say, when they say, well, I don't think we have that. And I say, well, do you see drugs being sold? Do you know about drugs you've been reading about in your town? Yeah. Guns? Yeah. But then why would they pass your community over and say, oh, no, we're not going to touch that community in terms of human trafficking? So what we're doing on the runaway issue is we're actually taking retired FBI agents who wanted to do presentations. They said, can we do presentations? And I said, no, that's not good enough. You have hunting and finding skills. I need you to go hunt and find. And so in my city, we're working up the plan. We know in Ohio, if the kid is gone, they've been approached by a trafficker within 2 weeks. We're going to give the names to the retired agents. You got 2 weeks. Go find them, and we'll link them with services. So we're going to start an active runaway program. Once we have these first responders identify kids, we want them to detain them long enough. We want them to value that kid has survived. We want them to educate them about trafficking. We want them to call child protection, the police, and the trafficking hotline. If they do that, they have served their purpose, and we can at least get that kid known to law enforcement. For our comprehensive programs, we have to do an assessment to know what that child might need. We have to get buy-in from that youth, and we have to divert them from being at further risk. So when I was coming here, I looked in the car, I looked up as if I was a young person in this community, and I needed information. I needed to know where I could go. If I was at risk, if somebody was trying to get me in the sex trade, if I was pregnant and I needed to go somewhere, if I needed friends, if I was troubled, suicidal. And I looked it up, because young people are very connected to technology. I didn't see. So you need a resource book online. You need a resource book that every 7th grader to 12th grader gets that speaks to them, not speaks to social workers or professionals, speaks to them. If you are having this issue, you know you can call so-and-so. And you can go there, you don't need an idea, this is how much it costs, and this is who you can talk to. You need that. It should pop up. First thing, when you Google it, it should pop up. Don't keep them in the dark. They need a free app. They need a free app on their phone. Youth services. So if their friend's standing there and they need some service, hey, I got it on my phone, I'll look it up for you. It needs to be accessible to them. It can't be a secret. Services can't be a secret known only to social workers. What we're doing in my community is we're starting pathways. We're starting a pathways model for high-risk youth, for victims, for survivors, for thrivers, and pathways that lead you from victim to survivor and survivor to thriver, and training people on how to produce outcomes. If you have a coalition or you're on a coalition, challenge your coalition. Don't sit around and process. Don't let that butt in the chair get warm. If you have dead weight, you need to move those people off the coalition because you got business to do. If they're coming up with goals and they're weak, go in and challenge them. You educated 2,000 people. This year, can you educate 3? Looking for 3,000. Can I hear 3,000? You always challenge them. You appeal to the coalition's dreams of why they went in the profession in the first place. You see, people will come to this issue. They went into their professions for reasons. They become teachers and police officers and social workers and counselors for reasons. And then, over the years, the bureaucracy got to them. And they might have started doing the 9 to 5. Their creativity was crushed. But they come to the coalition and you can say, you remember? We can do that here. What's your idea? Let's do it. But you gotta bring the sweat with it. On my coalition, don't give me an idea unless you got the sweat. Because we got lots of ideas. Don't come and insult us with an idea as if we never thought of it. Come and give us an idea and give us the sweat. And we will be behind you to do. We've done plays, people have come forward and they said, I know how to do this. And we said, let's do it. We had a plumber that said, I'm a plumber, I don't know, but I have daughters and I want to do something. And we're like, well, you know what? We have safe house. Can you check the plumbing? Anybody that comes forward, you put them to work. Safe houses. If you want to develop a safe house, which we critically need, safety, comfort, training. Those are the 3 critical elements. And a lot of people have comfort, the kids feel comfortable there, and the kids are safe there, but the staff aren't trained. The staff only knows Jesus. And I'm going to say, that's the beginning, but that's not the end. Jesus might say, then go get some skills. We have a trafficking education network, and we are offering 4 online courses and a certificate program because our next dream is to educate a national workforce. We want people going in nursing and counseling and law and criminal justice, having a human trafficking certificate, so they can go into these agencies trained and they can begin to advocate, create, do assessments, interventions, and it's going to triple. The ripple effect is going to be amazing, and that's our next dream. And then I'll end by saying, make no mistake about it, that this is the social justice issue of our lifetime. It is. And so when I was, in college, I would just dream about Martin Luther King movement, Gloria Steinem, women's feminist movement. I would be like, oh man, if I was there, I would be on the front line with Martin Luther King. I would be stuffing envelopes. I would be calling people. I would be there. Well, you know what? You can be there because the time is now. And you don't want to become a grandma or a grandpa and have your kids sitting there saying, Grandpa, tell me what you did in the great social justice movement when they had slaves. And you don't want to sit there and say, I didn't do anything. So, I'll leave you with that. I'll leave you with the last thing is, people say, God bless America. I don't know about God bless America. But you see these signs at gas stations and everywhere, God bless America, little stores. You know the best way to get God bless America? Because America's got to get right with God. So I thank you. I appreciate your time.